We've gone through the best player from every state, we know who that is by now, but now we need to find out who the best starting 5 from every state is. Okay, well not every state, we're only looking at the top 8, because I'm not about to list off 50 starting 5s, and there's not even 5 players from every state anyway, so we got the top 8. And number 8 is a pretty surprising one, probably one you wouldn't have even expected to show up in this video, because it's Georgia. For Malcolm Brogdon, Jaylen Brown, Jay Crowder, Derek Favors, and Dwight Howard. And Georgia would have been one of the last states I would have expected to be in this video. I mean, when I think of Georgia, I think of woods, camouflage, and compensating trucks. I don't think of world-class athletes that would make it to the NBA, and I guess that brings up a good point, and an obvious one, because the less popular a state is, the less people that live there, which means the less players that usually make it into the league. And the more popular states bring in a lot more NBA players because the population's bigger, which means there's a higher chance they'll make it. But it also has to do with basketball programs being a lot better in certain states like North Carolina than, say, Wyoming. So that plays a part too, but for this scenario, back to Georgia. Brogdon's great, Jaylen's great, and Crowder, Favors, and Dwight are all pretty good in their own roles, and altogether they'd be pretty good, but there's no star on the team. Jaylen Brown could end up in that spot, but for now that's unknown, so we can only guess that they would only get so far, and probably wouldn't make it to the playoffs. But hey, at least they still made it to the top 8. Number 7, we have another pretty unexpected one in Missouri. I mean, Missouri, along with Georgia, probably would have been one of my last choices for states that would have made this video, but they do make it because there's a good amount of talent there, with Landry Shamet, Bradley Beal, Otto Porter, Jason Tatum, and Michael Porter Jr. No true big man, so they'd be playing like the Rockets, but they'd be a good squad. They would have a lot of scoring potential around the perimeter, a good amount in mid-range, and a passable amount in the paint. And Shamet and Otto Porter would be the team's main defenders, Beal and Tatum would be the scorers and the stars, and Michael Porter Jr. would be the wild card. With all that said though, honestly I don't think this team would mesh well together. A lot of scoring, young players, and I wouldn't say that Bradley Beal's the best leader, so they might have trouble finding out who gets the ball and when. At least they were still good enough to beat out Georgia and land 7th on this list, so they do deserve some props for that though. Pretty surprisingly then, New York comes in at number 6, and it's a big surprise because historically New York's been one of the top 2 or 3 states all time for producing star NBA players. It's produced the second most players all time with just over 400, and all-time greats like Michael Jordan, Kareem, and Dr. J. So it's kind of weird that current players only rank 6th here, and it ranks here for Kemba Walker, Donovan Mitchell, Carmelo Anthony, Jonathan Isaac, and Andre Drummond. So yeah, not the best, but these 5 would definitely be a playoff team. The backcourt's what really makes them great, while the guys in the front court would all fill in the gaps perfectly. You got scorers, leaders, good shooters, defenders, and rebounders, and they really aren't missing anything. There's not even really a weak point here either, because even though a guy like Isaac isn't a good scorer, he's one of the best defenders in the league, so he fits into that role, while for instance Andre Drummond isn't a great all-around player, but he'll give you 15 rebounds a night. Then clearly Carmelo Anthony has been doing a great job of finally accepting his role as a third option on the Blazers, so transfer that over here and he would do the same behind Kemba and Mitchell, so he'd be their big go-to clutch scorer. I really like this lineup, and the only thing that prevents them from ending up higher is the fact that their stars aren't as good as some of the others ahead of them. Number 5, we got Illinois for their lineup of Derrick Rose, Fred VanVleet, Andre Iguodala, Robert Covington, and Anthony Davis. And AD is the main reason that these guys rank as high as they do. He's their true superstar, but he does have a great supporting cast. The offense will come from Derrick Rose and Fred VanVleet, and the defense will come from Covington and Iguodala, while obviously both will come from Davis. If I had to look for one flaw here though, it would be that they're lacking a true passer. I'm sure that their guards could fill that role if asked, but both Fred and Derrick are attack the basket first kind of players, so they'd have to change up what they're used to. Because if you're going to be playing with AD, you need a guy whose first priority is to set him up for open looks and help him get his 30 a night. But that's really the only problem with this team. Also, sure, Covington lacks in size, but that would help them play small ball, and Davis is dominant enough that he can make up for the rebounds that Covington would miss anyways, while still being able to run the floor with everyone. And with 4 guys on the outside, it leaves the entire paint for AD to dominate in. These guys only have one true superstar, but since their entire lineup's made up of pretty good compliments to him, it's why they rank here. Number 4, now as you can see we're getting into the more popular states with the better lineups. We had New York, now number 4 is Texas, where we have Trae Young, Marcus Smart, Jimmy Butler, LaMarcus Aldridge, and Miles Turner. And this right here is a good team. Marcus Smart, Jimmy, and Miles on for defense. Trae Young would be able to be the leader on the court, while Jimmy Butler would lead in the locker room, and they'd also have LaMarcus Aldridge who could do both. And even though there's no real dominant dominant superstar player on this team, they have the perfect blend of everything that they need to be very successful. And with everything they have here, I really don't see many weaknesses. I guess stretching the floor would be the only one I could come up with, because Trae Young's the only great 3-point shooter on the team, but because they're so great in every other category, I think they could get around that. There wasn't really too many other great current players from Texas, but these teams are slowly getting better. Number 3 goes to one of the biggest basketball states with North Carolina, for their squad consisting of John Wall, Chris Paul, Brandon Ingram, Montrezl Harrell, and Hassan Whiteside. Normally in most other cases, two former top tier point guards playing together would be a problem on the team. But as we saw, CP3 can play with anyone. It's different here though than him playing with James Harden, because Harden was a score first player, so all Chris had to do was be the playmaker. But in this case, Wall's also a playmaker. I wouldn't be too worried though, because I'm sure CP3 would make it work. Plus, hey, I think it'd be very similar to what he's done this year with the Thunder. He would be the team's main playmaker, while John Wall could take the role that Shai Gilgeous-Alexander has had this past season, meaning he would be able to transfer over to being just a scorer, which he's never gotten to do before. So you got that duo to go with Brandon Ingram, who's a certified scorer at this point, Montrezl Harrell, who can do it all, and Whiteside, who could cause some friction on the team, but he'd bring them some much needed defense that they'd be lacking. And a team with this much talent and the leadership to go along with it means that without a doubt they'd be a top team in the league. We've seen how good CP3's made the Thunder this year on his own, so with a lineup like this, they'd just be that much better. And still, almost 2 years later, we don't know how well John Wall will recover from his injury, but assuming he's at least a near all-star level player, they'd be good. Number 2, okay, this one isn't debatable. This one obviously deserves to be in the number 2 spot, especially because no one's beating out the number 1 team, but we'll get there. For this one though, Ohio takes it. They have Steph Curry, CJ McCollum, Karis LeVert, LeBron James, and Larry Nance Jr. So no true big man, which would eventually be a problem, but they have 2 of the best players in the entire NBA. There's 6 championships and 6 MVPs just between the 2 of them, while both Karis and CJ will get you 20 a game, and Nance really isn't relevant. But for a duo of LeBron and Steph, they'd probably be in championship considerations every single year. LeBron excels at playing with other stars, and so does Steph. He took the backseat to KD and still put up 30 a game, and could probably put up even more with how willing LeBron is to step back and just let his stars do their things, as opposed to Durant, who's a score first kind of guy. And that's not a knock on Durant, it just changes the team dynamic. The main question that puts all of this into jeopardy though is none of the 5 here are really good defenders, and with them playing so small, they'd probably get taken out easily by teams with a real agile big man like Anthony Davis. It'd be an interesting one though, and I mean, the Rockets have made it work, so who knows. Then for number 1, it was really no contest at all. There isn't even a second of debate on this one, because California takes it for their 5 of Damian Lillard, James Harden, Kawhi Leonard, Kevin Love, and Brook Lopez. Plus, guys that didn't make it include Russell Westbrook, Klay Thompson, Jrue Holiday, and DeMar DeRozan. Like, you could almost make a lineup out of players that didn't make it that would have still ranked number 1 for this video. There's something in the water in California, and their basketball programs are just some of the best in the world, like I mentioned. Plus, they also just have a much bigger population than most every other state, which gives them a bigger chance of success. But there's not even a need to go through how good this team would be. I'll still do it quickly though. It's really like the all-star team. Damian Lillard was playing like an MVP to close out the season. James Harden's the best scorer as always. Kawhi's arguably the best two-way player in the league, which is a great compliment to Dame and James. Then the front court takes a little step back with Kevin Love, who's still solid. And for Brook Lopez, if you're going to be getting a role player for a center, he's the number 1 guy that should be at the top of your list. And altogether, I really don't see any problems that would come up with this squad. So it's basically just a guaranteed championship waiting to happen. And I'm pretty sure I got everyone. I checked through all the states and double checked every player that played in that state. So I'm pretty sure all these teams are accurate and I didn't miss anyone. But if there is anyone that you think I may have missed, comment them down below and let me know. Like and subscribe if you enjoyed. Go check out my second channel with the first link in the description, and I'll catch you next video.